Hi, my name is Calidora.
And my name is Coral, and today we will be discussing our project about the space race. Specifically, to what extent American space technology was better than USSR space technology. So, why did we choose this topic?
We chose this topic because it is intriguing to learn about how space technology has developed throughout the years, from when the USSR launched Sputnik to possibly sending humans to live on Mars in 2030. The competition between the racing developments of space technology between the USSR and the United States has been a topic of controversy, since there really is no confirmed side that won. We find it interesting to see the two different perspectives of these space technology developments.
With that being said, we believe that American space technology was better than USSR space technology during the space race.
9. Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff. 32 minutes past the hour. Liftoff on Apollo 11.
So, what was the space race?
The space race was a main topic of discussion during the 50s and 60s. This happened during the Cold War and was a race between the US and the USSR to develop aerospace capabilities, including artificial satellites, unmanned space probes, and human spaceflight.
Both the US and the USSR were aided by German missile technology and scientists from their missile program. These technological advantages required for such power were seen as necessary for national security and political superiority.
In July of 1955, the US announced that they were going to launch their first satellite from Pravda on October 5th of 1955. Around a month later, on August 2nd of 1955, the Soviet Union responded to the US announcement of their similar intent to launch artificial satellites.
Between the two countries, the USSR managed to launch the world's first artificial satellite, Sputnik 1, on October 4th of 1957. This was a major accomplishment, and as a result, it created intense fear and anxiety among the US public that the Soviet Union had surpassed the technological achievements of the United States.
And thus the space race had begun. During the 50s and 60s, many space achievements were made, including the world's first communication satellite, made by the US, launched on the 18th of December of 1958. A dog named Laika became the first living organism to be sent to space by the Soviet Union on November 3rd of 1957, and the first man to reach space was achieved by the Soviet Union on April 1st of 1961.
However, most importantly, on July 20th of 1969, Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin became the first men to walk on the moon, while their crewmate Michael Collins continued to orbit around the moon in Apollo 11.
This was extremely significant, as many people believe that the United States won the space race because of this, even though it's not entirely confirmed who truly won due to the many achievements both countries faced.
Hippity-hoppity, hippity-hoppity, hippity-hopping over hill and dale. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Da-da-da. Hippity-hopping along.
So, why do we think the US had better technology?
We believe that the United States had better technology during the space race because of their many achievements.
For one, the US was able to launch SCORE, the world's first communication satellite, on December 18, 1958. It broadcasted a Christmas message from the US President Dwight D. Eisenhower, capturing the world's attention as he was the first broadcast of a human voice from space.
This is the President of the United States speaking. Through the marvels of scientific advance, my voice is coming to you from a satellite circling in outer space.
On January 31st of 1958, the US launched their first satellite to reach orbit. However, unlike the USSR's first satellite to reach orbit, this satellite had far better space technology as it carried experimental equipment that led to the discovery of the Van Allen radiation belt.
However, the most significant point as to why we believe that the US had the better space technology during the space race is when they clearly proved this, as they became the first country to walk on the moon, beating out the USSR.
In an article titled Space Program by John F. Kennedy, Presidential Library and Museum, President John F. Kennedy delivered a speech to a large crowd 8 years before they were able to achieve this, stating, "This nation should commit itself to achieving the goal, before the decade is out, of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to Earth. This shows that this was the ultimate goal for the US years before it even happened."
I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal, before this decade is out, of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the Earth.
As you can see, based on these many points, they clearly had the better technology at this time, as they were able to land on the moon first.
And the reason why this is impressive is because landing on the moon, walking on the moon, and then having the astronauts return to Earth safely is extremely difficult and takes the highest quality of space technology possible to be able to do this.
Not only this, but the Soviet Union never had anybody ever walk on the moon. Both Coral and I were actually quite surprised by this, as we assumed that the USSR would have tried to accomplish this. We find it strange how they just gave up after the US beat them to it, because normally they would have tried to get there, as we've seen with their previous space explorations. In what ways did we see the USSR having better space technology during the space race?
Well, the USSR definitely had better space technology during the earlier days of the space race, as they not only beat out the US in sending the first satellite into orbit, but they also sent the first animal and human to space.
On October 4th of 1957, the USSR launched Sputnik 1, the first Earth-orbiting satellite in history. And a month later, on November 3rd of 1957, they launched Sputnik 2, carrying a dog named Laika into space, as this is their second satellite sent into space carrying an animal, while the US still hadn't even sent a satellite into space yet.
Not only this, but they also sent the first human into space on April 12th of 1961, whereas the US didn't send out their first human into space until May 5th of 1961, almost 3 weeks later.
It is very evident that the USSR had better space technology during the 50s and early 60s with these many achievements, and even the US was quite frightened by this, to the point where in 1961, President John F. Kennedy asked Congress for another $7 to $9 billion over the next 5 years for just the space race. He knew, and so did the US, that the Soviet Union's space technology was far more advanced than theirs at the time, which is why he asked for such a large sum of money.
To conclude, it is evident that the USSR had better space technology during the 50s and early 60s. However, since the space race did end around the same time that the US had the capabilities to walk on the moon first, and the USSR wasn't able to beat that, they clearly ended up having the highest advancements compared to the USSR during the space race. And this is why we believe they ultimately had the better space technology. Now it's time for some Did You Know?
Did you know that the last person to walk on the moon was in 1972?
On December 11th of 1972, Eugene Cernan was the last person to walk on the moon. He walked on the moon with astronaut and geologist Harrison Schmitt. The US hasn't sent anyone since 1972 because it cost a lot of money to do this. Mentioned in an article by Business Insider, it would cost approximately $120 billion worth. Although some people don't agree that the US landing on the moon was the end of the space race, almost everyone can agree that the space race was definitely over by the time this event took place. Did you know that not even a year after the first man walked on the moon, crew on Apollo 13 almost never returned home?
In an article titled Apollo 13 by NASA, the Apollo 13 mission was a mission to send out more astronauts to reach the moon. However, it didn't turn out this way. 2 oxygen tanks exploded 56 hours into the mission on April 13, 1970. This forced the astronauts to be left in space for a total of 6 days, where they almost died due to lack of oxygen and lack of water. Later, there is a movie made about the Apollo 13 event, starring Tom Hanks.
I stirred the tanks.
Whoa. Hey.
This is Houston. Say again, please.
Houston, we have a problem.
Did you know that the USSR has never sent astronauts to the moon?
As we stated earlier in the video, it's true, the USSR never had any astronauts walk on the moon. As it turns out, it's simple. The USSR never had the right technology to be able to send anyone to the moon.
Thank you for watching. We hope you learned a lot about not only the space race, but the different space technology that was developed and used during this time. We hope you enjoyed the video.